Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 3 Episode 10. It's called 731. So spoilers for the episode as always. So I was a little bit mixed on the last episode and it was kind of part one of a two-parter. With Mulder jumping on the train at the end, and there was things I liked about it, stuff that I generally enjoyed scene-wise, but then some stuff like pacing and kind of the way the plot's tied together was a little bit iffy for me. I'm happy to say that I liked this one a fair bit more. I thought the episode was a very focused story because Mulder's on this train the entire episode pretty much, barring a little bit at the end. It felt like it was, a more streamlined tension. There's a killer on the train, there's a mystery on the train, and then eventually it leads to literally a bomb that might go off at some point, and will Mulder be okay? And then what Scully's doing is also pretty interesting. In fact, I might even say that I think visually this is one of the better looking episodes of the X-Files. There was several shots, particularly of Scully going through the woods and the helicopter trying to find her, her creeping about in the dark. They just looked pretty good. There was a lot of just nice visual, atmospheric, kind of creepy moments in this one that I really liked. But yeah, I mean, to get into kind of what's going on here, the two plots do connect quite a bit. Scully, after having a bit of a tiff with Mr. X, who won't really tell her much, he does though say to look into that chip that was found in the neck a little bit more. And after a conversation with the tech guy, the lab guy at the FBI, who I think has a crush on Scully, given that he makes a bit of a fool of himself at the end of the scene, it leads her to this colony that we do see at the start of the episode. There's kind of the cold open is this camp. Honestly, it looks kind of like a concentration camp. That's where my mind went when I saw it. But we see these alien-headed looking people be led out of a sort of big dorm kind of like cabin and be taken to a pit where they are executed at gunpoint by the military here, and they're put into a pit. And there's some other people who don't have the same alien heads, but they're very sick looking, and one in particular who like sneaks out, who they're all hiding under the floorboards of this cabin, but one sneaks out and watches this murder take place, this mass murder. And that's kind of the cold open of the episode. So this is the location that Scully is led to when she finds out more about this chip. And she, interacts with this man and sees the other survivors and is shown the pit of the dead bodies. And this is where a lot of the visual stuff that I was really liking. To be fair, I thought a lot of the stuff on the train looked quite good as well, but this was the stuff that felt super atmospheric. But ultimately, the military or whoever, Secret Service, well, not Secret Service, that's president related, you know what I mean? Whatever powers that be that are doing all this stuff, they show up and they kill the man. It's implied anyway, because you don't see it on screen, you just hear a gunshot. But Scully's confronted by a guy who looks a little bit like Robbie Coltrane. It's not Robbie Coltrane, but he looks a little bit like him. And he's like, hey, I've got some answers for you, I'm going to show you stuff. And he takes her to a train car very similar to the one that Mulder ends up in at the back of this train. Similar kind of operation room. And she basically has enough memories here to confirm that this is the same place that they took her to when she was taken. This effectively convinces Scully that she was never abducted by aliens, and that was just the sort of fantastical cover story to hide the truth, that the American government are experimenting on people. They have been basically since World War II in a variety of nasty ways, and what happened to her was one such example of this. And she's convinced that, the person on the tape, the apparent alien, and the one that's on the train that Mulder's on that we saw get in a hazmat suit last episode, that they're not aliens at all. They're just victims of who've been experimented on with various things and diseases and all kinds of stuff. And it's relatively convincing to a point. Obviously, it's X-Files. We still have this layer of expecting there to be more to the lie, like there to be another layer down. But I think there is some truth in what she's saying. I think that the idea that these people who had illnesses or whoever that were taken and experimented on, I think that's all true. The part that Mulder then adds on top of it, though, is that he believes they've been experimented with alien DNA, that this person he's looking at with the alien head is an alien hybrid. Not just a pure alien per se, but there is alien DNA involved here, and that's what all the experiments that this Japanese scientist was doing. And the reason why he was on the train is that he was basically trying to sneak what he discovered back to his own country, and he knew that the American government would never let him do that. So he was trying to sneak one of his experiment subjects on the train and take them out of the country. And unfortunately, obviously, he's caught. They've got this assassin guy after him that we saw briefly last episode. He factors in quite a bit here. He murders the Japanese scientist and then ends up confronting Mulder for a large chunk of the episode. They're in a bit of a stalemate inside the science train car. So it's I do like most of this, actually. I think, it's not as like last episode, it felt a little bit like things were struggling to connect together. I think here everything did kind of click into place a little bit where it made some amount of sense. I like the idea that they find a bunch of answers and it's enough to basically convince Scully that it's nothing to do with the aliens. Even though I do think she's seen some other stuff that should be pretty convincing at this point, that there is some alien shenanigans that are happening. That's the one little like nitpick to maybe throw at this, is that while yes, maybe there's a lot of truth here that this is just the government doing really bad things, and the alien stuff is like almost like just a smoke screen so that people are thinking about the crazy ideas and not thinking about what they're actually doing. That's all fine. That makes sense to me. But I don't think Scully should be completely saying, oh, this proves that there's no aliens, there's no abductions, this is all just this. Because she's seen other stuff too, right? She's witnessed direct things in episodes to this point. So it's I just want to throw that out there. I'm not forgetting that. But for the most part, in the eternal logic of the episode on its own, I do think it's a convincing set of things where she's willing to believe that human beings, that the government are doing really nefarious things. Mulder, of course, is convinced there is an alien element to it, and he kind of continues to believe that. And the fact that, like, he's expecting to be found, he's expecting them to come and get this thing back and not let the train car blow up. Because that's a lot of the early half of the episode is Mulder sneaking around this train. He talks to a conductor. He even gives the conductor a gun, unloaded to be fair, but he gives the conductor a gun in case the killer comes by. He finds the dead Japanese scientist, and it becomes this kind of hunt for this guy, but then it leads to the train car at the back. All of this going through the train I thought was actually quite fun. I was, if anything, I could have done with more of a let's find the killer on the train type of plot. And I wasn't mad that it didn't keep doing that, but I was enjoying it while it was lasting. So once we got into the science, the lab train car at the back, and the killer tries to kill him with a piano wire or whatever. It's actually the conductor who ends up saving him, but then they end up both trapped in there, and there's a bomb that's ready to go off. At least that's what the bad guy says, but later on Scully confirms it when she phones him, and she has all this information now from her plot. I think once it gets to that point, it's still pretty fun. I think there's a decent bit of tension. You've got a literal ticking clock in this case to something going off, and this idea that Mulder's willing to risk his life to get some sense of answers. They do a big thing where they get a big Lost-style close-up of his eye when he sees the alien hybrid in the back of the train car. Like he's seeing something that, like finally he's seeing complete in front of him visual evidence of an alien. Which I think is the other problem, actually, with Scully completely buying into there's nothing alien about this, even though I think most of what she's saying is true. That's the beauty of it, right? Is that the lie has a lot of truth in it. Like, they are abducting people to experiment on, the government that is. But it's, like, all that stuff is true. They're like, he's the guy that's talked to Scully's basically admitted that they're doing a lot of bad things. He's just conveniently left out the part where they're using alien DNA, which I suppose we as the audience don't know that for sure. That's what Mulder says, but because I'm watching the X-Files, I'm inclined to think that he's right. Because Mulder's just usually right, regardless of how much he's jumped to a conclusion. But Scully does see the pit of dead bodies, and they all have the exact same type of head. To the point where I would be questioning, especially since she is literally a trained doctor, that she would be questioning what could possibly have given all these exact same deformities. I don't know. Maybe something bearing worth thinking about, Dana. Just the thought. But The tension there is mostly pretty good, with the villain, Stephen McHattie, playing the villain here. I like him well enough as a bit actor. I think he has a good sense of presence and a bit of menace. So it's fun enough having that kind of play off Mulder and his his like enthusiastic naivete. I'm saying that correctly, damn it. But like it's a fun bomb under the table, or in this case, bomb in the roof type story, and it never really becomes about defusing the bomb because they don't really know what to do there. Scully says, "Hey, like get the conductor to stop the train at the next stop, and we'll send in a bomb squad." Mulder instead does something that is relatively smart. He's doing something to try and prove that he's right, but he's also doing something that, in theory, if he's not right, if Scully's right about what she's heard and what she's conveying to him, then he's also doing the right thing for that. Because Scully tells him that this patient at the back of the train car, the alien hybrid, which I'm going to keep calling it, even though Scully wouldn't call it that, I'm going to keep calling it that for clarity's sake. She says, "Oh, this thing, is got a bunch of diseases, and if that train car blows up, it'll spread this disease, in this sort of distance kind of thing." So Mulder's whole plan to take it to an isolated, non-populated area so that if it does blow up, and that's true, then it won't actually reach any civilized areas, at least very minimal. They're out in the middle of nowhere. Like, it's not necessarily a bad plan from that side of things. Like, it feels like, at the very least, if Mulder is wrong and everything he's heard is true, then he's still done something that will mitigate the risk that they're worried might happen. Of course, the fact that it's Mr. X who's the one that shows up at the last second to come in and possibly save the day here is interesting. And Mr. X, of course, goes and looks at the hybrid, but there's only like a minute left on the bomb at this point, so he has to just carry Mulder away. And we get a cool guys don't look at explosions moment as Mr. X is carrying Mulder away from the train car blowing up, which what's so funny is that I felt like the subwoofer on the 5.1 mix was quite active this episode for the train, like just the sound of the train moving. There was always a nice rumble to it, but then this explosion felt kind of like there was a little bit of bass, but it was a little bit anemic. And I thought, what's going on here? Why is the person mixing the audio track here? Because this wouldn't have been the original track. It wouldn't have aired in the mid-90s on TV with a 5.1 soundtrack. It would have been something done at the earliest for the DVD, maybe like a few years later, perhaps. Maybe even later than that, depending on when they did it. But it's just kind of funny to me that like the explosion doesn't have that much oomph, but the train just moving is quite active. Which, I mean, it should be. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but explosions are pretty hefty. at least movies have taught me they're hefty. I mean, I assume there's a bit of a boom to them, beyond the literal visual boom. Anyway, what was I getting at? So. Yeah, I mean, the whole standoff between him and the villain, Mulder, that is, there's a little bit of debating that comes in here. Mulder starts to jump to some conclusions and kind of accuses them of, they're doing this hybrid, experimentation to try and create people who are immune to a bunch of things. They want people who are immune to radiation to fight wars, right? It's funny, though, because, the bad guy says, what's even more valuable than the atomic bomb or Star Wars? Not the franchise, the space program to shoot down nukes. What's more valuable than them? And Mulder says, someone who's immune to those. And I'm like, okay, I get what he's saying, that, obviously he's talking about the radiation, and he's talking about someone who can, go into an area where a nuke's went off. I'm pretty sure if one of these people were at the epicenter of a nuclear bomb going off, they'd still be obliterated to smithereens. I don't think, unless they turn them into Superman, where they're made of steel and vulnerable, I don't think they're immune to that. It was just weird to phrase it that way. Immune to a nuclear bomb. I don't think that's quite how it works. But the idea that they're immune to a bunch of stuff, immune to biological diseases, so they could, effectively launch a bio weapon of some kind and then send in these hybrid troops that will be fine in those conditions to mop up in the aftermath kind of thing. That's kind of what they're going for, this idea that they're all... And, you know, as a fan of Alien who, you know, loves the whole Weyland-Yutani side of that and, like, them always wanting to create better bioweapons and more nefarious, like, evil ways to fight and gain control. Like, I'm into this, broadly speaking. Like, I think this is all kind of cool, like, shady stuff that the government's up to. So I was into kind of the ideas that it was putting forth here, and it did seem like Mr. X, if he had had time, would have wanted to take the hybrid as well, because he made a point of going and looking at the hybrid, and then I just don't think there was time for him to do anything else. He just had to pick up Mulder and get a move on. But certainly an interesting moment in and of itself, and then of course Mulder's frustrated that, you know, even the evidence with the scientist briefcase has disappeared. The ending revealing that the smoking man's got his hands on it, because of course he does. Of course he's the one getting all these shady secrets. They kind of, I don't know if they made it completely clear if he had cracked all of this potential research and like figured out a way to make these super soldiers and was trying to just leak it back with him to his own country, or... Because they kind of get into the idea at one point that he started doing experiments that even the government didn't know about. Like the idea they gave him asylum so that he could work on these experiments. You know, a lot like some Nazi scientists were given in the real world after World War II to work on things for. I don't know if it was specifically NASA or whatever, but that was definitely a thing that happened. In fact, I think it may be something this show has even brought up before. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But the idea that he started doing some extra research in secret, or he started hiding his results from them. So it kind of seems like he cracked it, but maybe didn't give it over to the government and the powers that be. So it's kind of a big deal that the Smoky Man has got a translator going through his journals at the end here, because it feels like he's getting access to all these secrets. And I do wonder if that means that down the line we're going to have like a more advanced version of these hybrids, maybe ones that just look human still. Maybe they'll figure it out so they don't have to actually change their appearance when they do this. We'll get some like just straight up super soldiers down the line. It feels like something very possible based on what's been set up here. And this episode, of course, does call back to Scully being taken last season. It calls back to a couple of different things. Scully's sister being killed is brought up by Mr. X here. So there is a sense of continuity here. It does feel like these two episodes are part of the main, you know, overall plot. They're not just, you know, Freak of the Week episodes, to use that term. But I definitely like this one more than the last episode. I think this one worked in a way where it was still advancing those overall plot things, but for me, it was more enjoyable because the actual focus setup of what the episode was, which is of, oh, we're on this train, we're in a confined space, hunting a killer, then a standoff with the bomb, all the atmospheric stuff with Scully was really visually exciting to watch. Like, it just kind of nailed being good on its own as an episode, as well as adding to the overall mythos and like advancing the overall story. Which, you know, because the overall story has given me a couple of episodes that I have not liked that much. But, you know, particularly at the end of season 2 and early in season 3, some of the standalone episodes have been definitely more, I think, up to my my taste, I guess, for lack of a better term. So, yeah, I mean, but this one was good. This one, I think, really worked as both types of episode. And I think that's a smart way of doing it. And I'm sure they're not all going to feel that way in the future, but I really liked how this kind of worked as a very self-contained story for the most part, in terms of its thrills, in terms of its what its tension was kind of revolving around. I was into it. Now, I suppose a question that one might ask about this episode is that, does it justify that cliffhanger from last week where Mr. X was like, Mulder is going to die if he gets on that train? Did it kind of live up to that hype that he was trying to sell here? Does it feel like it betrayed that promise in any way? Obviously it survived, and he was always going to survive. I think it did, for the most part. I think this idea that this train was rigged to blow because this Japanese scientist had rigged it so that if he died, which he thought he might, this would never get out. Like the people, the powers that be, the government here would never get it, right? So I think this idea that Mr. X legitimately thought Mulder would be dead, and the fact that he shows up to save him. Now, again, I'm not convinced that was his primary goal here. that, you know, he saved Mulder because why not? He's here anyway. But it feels like maybe the main goal was the hybrid, but it was too late to do anything about that. It is interesting though that Mr. X showed up on his own, right, before anyone else did. That's curious. I wonder if there'll be maybe more to elaborate on that in the future. So, no, interesting. It's not the first time either this season. It's only a few episodes ago, right, where Mr. X showed up to save the day, kind of near the end of an episode. You know, it's interesting. It's happened a couple times. He's definitely integrating into the show a little bit differently than Deep Throat was, where he's getting his hands a bit more dirty, I suppose, with the plots. Don't get me wrong, he's still showing up and spouting some mystic conspiracy nonsense as well. Like, he's still doing the Deep Throat stuff, but it does feel like he shows up, and because I mean, even in this episode when he shows up, we don't see who it is at first. We hear the gunshot, we see the bad guy go down, and then we follow the feet of whoever it is. And I actually did have the thought, I bet that's Mr. X. I called it, you know, 10 seconds before they revealed it. Not that I want a medal or anything, it's not that surprising, but I think it was like, oh, it just makes sense that it's him. It makes sense that he's kind of shown up. And I also kind of like the idea that Mulder doesn't seem to know who saved him. Because, you know, Scully's asking some questions afterwards about, you know, where were you? It turns out the call that was placed to get you picked up and taken to hospital came from a payphone in Iowa. And it's like, okay, so they clearly don't know who actually showed up to save his ass. And that's kind of interesting, because obviously they have some trust issues with Mr. X. Scully tries to pull a gun on him even at the start of this episode. Like, she's sick of his shit. And it's interesting that he maybe would win some of their trust if they knew he was helping here in this way. But then maybe he'd have to answer how he found the train so quick. And he does like to keep his secrets. He likes to keep things close to the chest. So I guess the way that the idea that the other women who had the chips in them are believing they're going to die, maybe they won't all die, but this idea that the experiments were involving giving people diseases to try and see if they can make them immune to them, and that obviously involves giving them said diseases to see if it worked. I wonder if that's why some of these women are also getting sick. Yeah, it's not exactly the same as the people in a leper colony, but maybe, you know, the woman who has cancer because they were intentionally trying to provoke certain things. Maybe not. I mean, I don't know if you can give someone cancer that easily, but certainly radiation and things like that can lead to cancer, and, you know, whatever stuff they were maybe doing to her. But no, it's interesting. So the idea that Scully was abducted and now believes it was for this reason, she believes that aliens didn't have anything to do with it. It is kind of interesting, though, as much as I think that there is enough evidence for her to maybe still think that aliens are a thing. It is interesting to me that the most vulnerable situation she's been in the show, she now just believes her own government are responsible for it. So even though she doesn't, you know, she's not in bed with Mulder on the alien part of the whole thing, she does have maybe more motivation now to be mistrusting of her superiors, to be mistrusting of the system, of wanting to expose some kind of truth. So I'm curious to see how this maybe, like, more hardened revelation she now has, this thing that she now knows and believes at the very least, how that maybe informs some motives in future episodes, particularly when we get back around to main story stuff. It may be in small ways some of the individual episodes, because we've definitely seen that before, where little moments have been enhanced because I know kind of where the character's head's at this point in their overall story. Because it's like, oh, hey, it makes sense that she, you know, for example, like 1 week after she'd been abducted, there was an episode that put her in danger, and it was like, oh, this maybe hits a little bit weirder and harder now because she feels a little bit more scared of being kidnapped because she went through that ordeal. Something as simple as that. I do wonder, like, how this newfound focused kind of determination she maybe has as a result. You know, I'm curious to see how and if that plays into anything going forward. But yes, anyway, that's my thoughts on this episode of The X-Files. It was pretty good. Let's have a look and see what's coming next time. We've got an episode called Revelation, so something biblical happening, I suspect. Here's a description on IMDb. Mulder and Scully attempt to protect a boy whose death could trigger the coming of Armageddon from a possibly demonic serial killer who targets people with stigmata. That's a lot of big words. Armageddon, demonic, stigmata. Consider me intrigued. Consider me intrigued, if nothing else. Will it be good? I hope so. I do see Michael Berryman's name in the cast list. Oh, and also Arlie Ermey, who, of course, Full Metal Jacket and stuff like that. So yeah, a couple of recognizable faces in the cast list for the next one. So yeah, we'll see how that pans out next time. But let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that usual stuff helps out a bunch. And of course, you can support all the reviews and help keep the show coming by supporting via patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership, or even a super thanks, as a one-time thing. Any support is great. And if you do support in any ways, let me know that the X-Files reviews are one of the reasons why you want to support, because it's one of your one of the key things that you consume from MailFuzz TV or MailFuzz Movies. Go check out the movie podcast. But that is me, so thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?